How important a part is the House of Lords in our constitution, and is that the reason that Labour want to abolish it?
The House of Lords can be seen simply as a dignified part. In other words, a performance, as opposed to the efficient part, which is the House of Commons. But actually, of course, the House of Lords is Parliament. This is why the state opening of Parliament takes place in the House of Lords, presided over by the King, now, of course, was the Queen, and who never, of course, takes part in their deliberations, but is the animating force. All statutes are actually issued in the name of the King with the advice and consent of the Lords Spiritual and Temporal. Spiritual, they're your lot. They are the bishops. The Lords Temporal are the peers, and Commons in this present Parliament assembled that. Now, that has been going on, Calvin, in exactly that same form since the 14th century. We have modified it a little bit. We have introduced different notions of franchise. But the fundamental idea of Parliament is this notion of self-government, because the great formula, and it's announced again as early as the 1300s by the judges, is everybody is bound by what is decided in Parliament, because everybody is there represented either in person, they are the Lords, or by their representatives, they're the Commons. Now, that idea, that historical grounding of our Constitution, is, of course, what a very minor, temporary, here today, gone tomorrow politician like the Lord Speaker, Lord McFall, simply doesn't understand. And the great problem is that most constitutions last only 20 years. Ours has lasted pushing 600.
Well, let's take a look at Lord McFall's comments. He said the House of Lords needs to keep up with the times. If it doesn't, it will decline, and that's bad for our politics and bad for our democracy. He recommended making the chamber smaller, more inclusive and more representative of all parts of the United Kingdom. Now, what do you make of that?
I think there's a very solid case for making it very much smaller. But the real question, Calvin, is to ask why the Lords is such a mess. And the reason why the Lords is such a mess is Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. It is the chaos of constitutional reforms of New Labour, which were brought in off the hoof with no serious consideration as to their consequences, and the disasters of which we are reaping now. A House of Lords of a house of cronies. That's what they actually created. They claimed to be reforming. They were corrupting.
Why shouldn't we have an elected second chamber? What's the benefit of valuing our inheritance?
An essential part of a constitution is balance. You require old and new. You also need to recognize that the old should shape the new, that it's a kind of soil, it's a kind of humus from which novelty should arise. You don't go out, again, Disraeli described, the greatest conservative politician of the 19th century, the founder of the modern Conservative Party. He puts it beautifully. He says, Britain is a progressive country. There will always be change. There should be change. The question is how you change. And he says what you should do is change should modify what you've got. You shouldn't be going outside and reaching for alien principles. I mean, New Labour, of course, exemplifies this completely. You go outside and borrow a wholly foreign concept, like the separation of powers. There's never been a separation of powers in Britain. It is a complete myth. You go outside and reach for a wholly foreign notion, like a Supreme Court. And England, Britain rejected that idea. Common law is firmly and properly under the will of the people as expressed in Parliament, which is why you have this extraordinary tension now between popular opinion and the legal system. What's very interesting if I bothered to read the full report, and if you get to the end of it, even they are worried about it. What they say is we need to establish its legitimacy. Do you know what they say? We might even need to talk to the people about it. But what's very striking is they don't talk about talking to the people through the legitimate channels of Parliament. They want citizens' juries. Well, we know why they want citizens' juries. They would fix who was on the citizens' jury. But even they recognize the need for legitimacy. And the fact you've done things in one way is the reason for legitimacy.
So obviously America